Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at the aviation side of the planned BR changes. We'll also be looking at the naval side of things, so if you want to specifically have a look at that, I'll leave some timestamps in that will cover everything. So, let's get started. The first part is we're going to be focusing on aerialistic, and it is for the J-11, the Su-27, the F-16A, and also the nets, specifically the F-16A for France, because some of the other F-16As are also getting moved around. I suppose we could throw in the F-16AJ, the AMLU, and the ADF, and the Italian ADF. These are all going down in BR by 1 BR bracket, and this really shouldn't be surprising. One of the things that's happened a lot over the previous period of time for aviation specifically is they've gone from about 12.7 to 13.7 incredibly fast, and there hasn't been any readjustment of vehicles within that bracket. So now what we're getting is a little bit of readjustment after that BR decompression that pushed a lot of those vehicles up by 2 BR brackets straight away as they were added. Stuff like the active radar homing missile firers. Now, a lot of the vehicles which don't have access to those are struggling for obvious reasons. When you don't have access to certain mechanics, but the enemy does have access to certain mechanics, it ends up hurting you. This is why having stuff like IR missiles compared to not having them, having countermeasures compared to not having them, makes a huge difference for vehicles. And that's no different whether you're looking at like 10.0 or 13.0. So to see a lot of vehicles get decreased in BR because they don't have access to these mechanics, and they are just suffering because of it, should not be a surprise to any. This is a standard thing that happens quite a lot in terms of the high echelons of pretty much any game, where you have, you know, the meta vehicles, and then they introduce new stuff on top of it with better mechanics. That means the lower stuff is going to suffer, and that's exactly what we see here. So the largest change in aviation for jets, which is going to make a pretty big difference, is the F-14s. Finally, the F-14s are getting a little bit more balanced compared to what they were before. Now, the F-14s sit in an interesting space because they're a lot lower BR than a lot of other vehicles that have active radar homing missiles, and also their active radar homing missiles have been buffed many times over the last period of time. But their BRs haven't changed at all. So now what we're seeing is all 3 F-14s, the B, the ALE, and also the Iranian one, all go up in BR, because they should do, since they were dominating the meta so much. When I talked about the Tornado, when we spaded that, when I spaded the MiG-21 BIS, and also even played the AMX Ghibli around this BR, the F-14s are incredibly dominant, and there's nothing that you can do against them, meaning that they're creating a black hole in the game, which decimated anything around them. So the fact that all 3 of them are going up should be no surprise to anybody. Now, there are some interesting side effects of this happening. The Iranian F-14 has gone down in price by approximately 20 Gaijin coin as of recording of this video in a few hours. So if you are a person who wanted to purchase it but didn't want to pay a crazy price, might be worth having a look at it right now. So all of them are going up by 1 BR bracket, and generally this is a very positive thing because it releases a lot of those other vehicles that rely on semi-actives and also IR guided missiles to actually have fun, instead of constantly worrying about getting twatted by those things. Now, those vehicles there, stuff like the F4S, for example, they're not moving in BR, but the lower-end vehicles are. So the F4EJ Phantom, F4EJ ADTW, all going down to 11.0. All of the MiG-21 BISs are going down to 11.0, thank God, that's fantastic. And then also stuff like the Saab J35XS is going down in BR, along with the MiG-23M and the MFs, which are also all going down. These vehicles don't have, or did not have, a place in the meta at all, apart from to be food for other vehicles. This was a consequence of what happened with that huge BR decompression that we talked about before. These vehicles got raised up into the BRs of stuff like the F-14s and the F-4Ss and just got decimated. So as a person who has spaded some of these vehicles recently, they were in terrible positions, and I'm hoping that now they will be in much better positions. The F5A and the F5C are also going down in BR to 10.7 instead of 11.0. This was inevitable. The F5C and the F5A were allowed to dominate for approximately 2 years or more, so I think it was nice that they got a little bit of a taste of their own medicine for a few months, and how it has felt for everybody else to fight a vehicle that you are slower than, that you turn less than, and also usually has a better armament than you when you're in a 9.3 vehicle versus the 10.3 F5C or the F5A. Now, right at this moment, this is a lot better compromise for both machines. This is what should have happened in the first place, but also at the same time, just like when you have somebody who needs to have their face pushed into the mud over and over and over again because they're being a twat, the F5C needed that for a little bit, and that's why I'm very happy that this happened to it. There's also a few other balance changes that are coming in for some mid-tier jets. The Mirage 5BA for France is going down to 10.3 from 10.7. Not really a huge surprise. It's very limited in weaponry, the 5BA, so even though it has the countermeasures, it never was able to really hold its own at that BR. If you want to compare it to another vehicle, the one to look at is the Mirage 3E. The 3E has access to 2 Magic Wands and also the 530E, which is a super fun missile, plus, of course, the upgraded engine and countermeasures, whereas the 5BA only really got the countermeasures, and that's it, and a couple of 9Js, which are very much inferior to the Magics and the 530E. It was always weird that it was at that BR, so now I think it's in a lot better place. The F4C continues to be an issue balancing-wise, since it is a bomb truck, and since they buffed quite a few munitions on it. The issue with it, though, is it can't defend itself since it doesn't have countermeasures. It is interesting how we can give countermeasures to the F5C and the F5A, even though they never had them, but for some reason the F4C is not allowed any to actually properly balance it. So instead, it will continue to live in this doldrums of not knowing where it should be. And then the A5C is also going up once again, so if you purchased it with the Chinese pack, or if are thinking about purchasing it in the Chinese pack, just take that into account, because it is in a higher BR bracket after these planned changes. Remember, they are just planned though, not fully implemented yet, so that can change. And then we have a bunch of changes between 9.0 and 10.0, which are incredibly baffling to me. So first of all, the Q5L is going up to 9.7 in a realistic. I get that because it has countermeasures. Very hard to actually die in that thing, is probably the way to put it. It's super simple to kind of grind out, so therefore you can use it in ground forces, which is mainly where it's supposed to be. The one that is more surprising is the Q5A. Now, the Q5A does have countermeasures, so, you know, that's probably why it's going up, and the other Q5 isn't, since it doesn't. But I honestly felt like with the Tornado being a different BR from the other Tornado, because it has guided munitions, I thought they would do the same thing with the Q5L. But I'm guessing, for some reason, this doesn't get the same treatment as the Tornadoes, and the Tornadoes will continuously be different BRs from each other for no apparent reason, especially since everything else seems to be under a different standard. The SU-7s are going up in BR again, so they're going to become fodder. I feel like these are going up in BR because they can finally actually deal with bases effectively. The incendiary changes have made a lot of these vehicles much more powerful at gaining score again, because they can nuke bases. And the SU-7 being so fast, the issue always with the SU-7 is no countermeasures, but also the secondary factor. Its actual bombing or CAS role in aerialistic is not good. It's actually in a really rough position because of its limited armaments and what it can bring. Now with the incendiary buff, that thing can knock out a couple bases, where before it couldn't even knock out one base before they started screwing with the incendiaries. So that might be something why it's going up. It shouldn't go up though, because there are too many monsters and it's just going to get nuked. The Q5 early is going up to 9.3. Obviously, once again, incendiaries buffing it up in BR. The F3H2 Demon goes down to 9.0 because, right, so whenever an American vehicle goes down now, And especially if it's an American vehicle, which should not go down, such as the Demon. The Demon should not go down. It's not in a great place, but it should not go down. It fits its BR. It just has wonky matchups. That does not mean that it should go down in BR. I'm just going to put these changes down to ludicrous people playing these vehicles. I'm talking about, people who would have been in, I don't know, the asylums in Gotham have decided that they want to play the Demon because of its name. It should not go down in BR. It's ridiculous that it's going down. The Q5 early going up, as I said. The Hunter F6 going up because whatever, screw the Hunters. I'm amazed the F1 didn't go up again. Why not? Just stick the F1 at 9.3. The fact that you see the Demon is the same as the Hunter F1 is insane to me. It's so stupid. Or why even have any of the Hunters in this game? Like, if you're just going to continuously punish them just in the face over and over again, just smash them over and over and over again because somebody decides that they actually like a British vehicle. It's so awful what they've done to the Hunters. And then the Sea Vixen now. The Sea Vixen is going up to 9.0. Because the MiG-15 bis and the F-35 are obviously way too powerful, or sorry, just way too terrible at 8.3. Just somehow the Sea Vixen is just being able to deal with everybody. Somehow this thing is just taking over the meta with its 4 missiles and being able to go high and shooting missiles down. It's so nuts. Every Hunter in this game is at such a dodgy BR. If you have a look at the British Hunters, the Hunter F1 being at 9.0, the F6 being at 9.7, it's so ridiculous. And then you have a look at the French ones, which is the one that's actually getting changed. That one is at 9.0, but it has the AIM 9Bs, right? So that's why it's going up. And also it is technically the F6 instead of the other one. Then you got the J34, which stays at 9.0, but that one also has AIM 9Bs. So that one, for some reason, gets to stay where it is. Even though it's pretty much exactly the same as the Hunter F6. I don't know what to say. Oh, and you know what the best thing about all these changes? The FAU2 stays at 10.0. So it doesn't matter, because you're just food. Because they refuse to put up that vehicle. So, none of this matters. None of it matters. Because you're just going to die to an FAU2. Because they refuse to up its BR. No idea why. Must be somebody's favorite vehicle. The Pulk Bearcat is also going down in BR from 6.7 to 6.3 in aerialistic. Not too surprising, I suppose. Once again, it's another one of those vehicles that's heavily reliant on modifications. You need the HVAP to be a decent ground pounder in it. And if you decide that you want to go after aircraft, at least my experiences when I spedded it way back in the day, a long time ago, was the round was not exactly what I would class as consistent in terms of doing damage. It might be completely different now, but back then it was very rough. So we'll have to see what goes on with that. I don't think it will change too much. It just means that it'll be in BR brackets where you'll be able to kind of play PvE in aerialistic in a way. You'll be able to kind of do what you want because if an enemy comes for you, you can just fly away. So yeah, wouldn't be too worried about that one. The F8 F1 is going down in BR again, which it seems to surprise a lot of people. It's one of those things which is always kind of talked about, how the Bearcat keeps going down in BR. And now being at 4.7, I only have one thought to really put out. And it's the fact that if you take an American vehicle, or take many of the different nations' vehicles in the game, what you'll find is if it loses a metric ton of energy after 1 or 2 turns, it will go down in BR. Like P-51s, P-47s, Bearcats, even stuff like the I-225, right? All of these vehicles cut through the air and cannot keep up their turning for too long. And this means that if you don't hit on that initial hit, you are struggling and you are going to just get nuked by whatever has turned up. And that's exactly what happens with the Bearcat. It doesn't have enough armament to be able to nuke on that first hit, and people do not have enough patience to actually play it properly. So instead, you have this scenario where it will just keep going down in BR, because of the meta that's around the place. It just won't work. And that's why all of these American vehicles keep going down in BR. I blame the education system of many different countries across the international, well, across the world, I suppose, across the globe. I blame the enhancement of video games and TV shows, TikTok. I also blame stuff like Vine back in the day, which reduced people's kind of attention span. I blame ADD medication. I blame ADHD medication for vehicles like the Bearcat consistently going down in BR. I also blame Gaijin for reducing the timer on matches to 25 minutes, forcing these quicker engagements, because that doesn't favor the Bearcat and means that it just is in a terrible position. When it comes to the Russians, they're changing some BRs in ground realistic for some aircraft, which is actually really cool. The Yak-9 UT is increasing to 6.0, the Tismar is increasing, the PE-8 is finally increasing, the Wyvern is increasing as well, that's obviously British, and the Yak-9K is increasing too. So the reason why the 9UT, the Tismar, and the Yak-9K are going up is because of the 45mm change. If you don't know what they did with that vehicle, in the last update, they added a new shell. So what this new shell does is it has an APHE effect on it, and it is for the 45mm gun. It is the APHE ground target belt, and it pens up to 60mm, but the thing is, if it pens, it nukes a vehicle. It's really powerful right now. And since around the BRs that you find these things, there's not a ton of vehicles which actually have a lot of roof armor, you can just loop onto a ground vehicle, pop it with one of these rounds, and it just explodes. So it's nuts at the end of the day. So that's why all those are going up. The PE-8 is self-explanatory. It's a vehicle that should have gone up a long time ago and should keep increasing in BR. What they should actually do is if you load into a conquest battle, you should not be allowed to spawn it in. Or what we could do is the correct decision and just remove conquest from the game. So therefore we won't have these issues with the PE-8 and also with stuff like the Lancaster, for example. But c'est la vie, that's not going to happen. The Wyvern has a really good bomb load and also has a lot of speed, so hitting it with AAs is not exactly the easiest thing to do, so that's probably why people are struggling. But overall, you can't complain about any of these changes. All of them make sense, all of them work, since they are very good at CAS, all of these vehicles. They've also done a lot of helicopter changes, but these go in line with the ground changes. If you didn't know, even though all of airplanes have like separate BRs per game mode, helicopters don't. So with the BR decompression coming in for ground, the BR decompression is coming in for helicopters. So now a lot of them have been bumped up in BR, including some of the worst offenders, Mi-28M, the K-52, and also the K-50, but there is at least one that is missing, which is the Z-10. They might have just forgotten about it, or this is, for some reason, not going up in BR. Seems a little bit odd if that's the case, but who knows. Main thing is, though, is it's just following the same trend, and that's fine. We also have some naval changes, and they're actually going back to standard with some of the cruisers. There's a few cruisers in the game that are around 5.0 that aren't very good, and a lot of you probably have played them. A lot of the Japanese cruisers are absolutely horrific to start off with. Stuff like the Isuzu, for example, and then also the Kako, the Tama, as it's known now, and also the Sendai. But there are other nations where, with some of the BR decompression they actually up-tiered a bunch of their cruisers, and some of them are now coming back down again. So the Bartolomeo Colleoni is coming to 4.7, which is surprising to me. I thought the Bartolomeo was okay at 5.0. The major problem with the Bartolomeo is 5.7 and 6.0 existing, but that's pretty much the problem for a lot of those cruisers that are sat around those BRs. I'm more surprised that the Raimondo Montecuccoli and also the Duca degli Abruzzi actually stay at 5.7 instead of going down because they only have those 152s. But it seems like for some reason the Corleone is once again going down. I'm not mad about this. I mean, the Corleone is super fun to play, so I'm fine with it, but I just don't think it needs it. The Krasny Kavkats and also the Enterprise are also going down. The Enterprise is a very awkward vehicle, and I'm fine with that going down because the firing angles of its guns are really rough, and also it doesn't have a lot of armor, but has ammunition everywhere. So wherever you hit the thing, it's going to break something, and you basically have the major issue of trying to get all of the guns on target at once, which is very tough to do. So even though it's a cruiser, it really doesn't have a lot of survivability. The Krasny is kind of similar to that, but it does have the big old donkey guns, which are quite fun. The big old donkey guns are only useful, though, if you can, well, in essence, donk something. And with a lot of rapid-fire destroyers being added to the game, Z-46, Z-47, all the 5.0 Americans, the 4.7 British destroyers, they just get out, they out-trade the Krasny in a really tough way, and once again it doesn't have a lot of armor to be able to stop the rounds coming in, and with this shift to using a lot of AP stuff, those vehicles are just going to get nuked. So not really too surprising to me to see all three of those go down. They all have, you know, in common, pretty low fire rate, not great survivability, and also just having to face those really deadly destroyers. Then we have some French changes, which are based around, you know, their CVT being added. The VLT 1 and 2, both of them are going down to 3.3. No surprise there. They were very middling for 3.7s, and at 3.3 they should be fine with the guns that they have. The Combatant going down in BR, the good old SS-11 launcher, which, let's be honest, not a surprise. That thing is incredibly limited in use. And as I said, the biggest buff that you could do to a thing like that is actually let it be allowed to spawn at destroyer spawns. And then maybe it might actually have a use, but right now it just doesn't. It's one of those which just doesn't fit in the meta right now. The Drach is going up. I've never played the Drach, and I've never see the Drach, or the Drach, or whatever you call it. The German vehicle. The MPK PR201K is going up to 3.7, another barge that should be increasing anyway. What's more surprising to me is they still don't touch any of that 4.3 lineup for the Soviets. So they're not touching the SKRs, they're not touching the PR206, they're not touching any of those things, and all of these are just meta. They're just meta vehicles. They all work very well together, and they're just not touching it at all. They are touching the Candid, though, and the Candid should go up. It's very, very good. The way to play the Candid is to actually use the other guns, or the secondary armaments. You can even turn it around to make it even more efficient. It has two 40mm that have really good firing angles on it, so if you use those to beat up other coastal machines, you can be really powerful. The other part of the Candid, which is really nice, is it has what I class as like destroyer DMs. It's not really what they are, but there are certain vehicles in terms of coastal vehicles that have a lot more survivability than others. Stuff like the Peacock, for example, is one of them, the M802, and the Candid. And I don't know why they have this survivability, but they do. And it makes them really fun to play, and the Candid is one of those that really has a good time with that. The PT-812 is also going up in BR. I've got to be honest with you, as somebody who has played a lot of 3.0 American Naval with the PT-565, the Thunderbolt, the 59, even the Candid, the TOMCAT, I haven't played any of the 812, but when I look at it, it just doesn't seem better than any of the others. It seems, if anything, exactly the same, if not worse, because it doesn't have as much speed. So, and also doesn't have any torpedoes either. So maybe I'm just missing something, but I don't really understand that change. And then the MAS, or the MAS 441, the new Italian little fisherman boat is going up in BR. This one isn't too surprising to me that it's going up, even though it's a Vickers. The 40mm does have quite a large magazine on it, so it can get out a lot of damage before this thing kind of falls apart. So for me, I actually really like vehicles like this. I'm looking forward to playing it, and seeing it go up really shouldn't be too surprising. So that's all the BR changes for naval and also for planes. The naval ones are fine. They mostly make sense to me. The aviation ones are a bit all over the place. Since this is the first iteration of the changes, I'm sure they'll add more to them. And just as a last note, they are switching the candid with the Asheville, so just to let you know that. But make sure to get your voice heard if you agree or disagree with the changes. Make sure to, push forward your ideas. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day. And I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.